there, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm Blondie.
And I'm T.
So, T, how you doing this fine day?
Pretty good. I actually have no complaints. Life is bueno.
Oh, please. You can always complain. It's just a matter of who's going to listen.
I'm pretty much just giving up because nobody ever listens. So, yeah, let's just move on.
Next.
So, how are you doing?
I'm doing well as well, but I got a new bidet and I can't figure it out.
I love a bidet. I have a little bidet too. It's nothing fancy, but it's cute.
And I love it. You know, the ones in Europe, the little standalone ones where you can like adjust the faucet thing on it. So it's easier to use. But this one, you just attach it to your toilet and you turn it on, the little door opens and it's like, hello, how you doing?
Okay, wait a minute. You have a little door that opens? Are we still talking about the bidet?
You're nasty.
I was not expecting you to say the little door opens. What door?
There's a little door at the bottom that opens and closes.
Oh, mine does not have a door. It's just straight up right there.
Well, mine apparently is more bougie.
Okay.
But trying to figure out, okay, do I move forward? Do I lean back? Do I turn it low? Do I turn it to blasting myself off the toilet? And let's not forget closing the legs so we don't water the wall.
Okay,
I have issues.
Wait a minute. We're not talking about the bidet anymore.
You're nasty today. What is wrong with you?
I don't know. The way I'm interpreting your words, I'm like, ew.
You're the only one going, eh.
No, there's going to be other listeners going, what the hell is she talking about?
Well, I'm talking about my bidet, and that is it.
And we are still talking about a bidet, right?
I'm going to hurt you today. So anyway, I need to find some type of a YouTube video on proper positioning. Proper positioning. Because I either wipe out everything or I don't get it at all. I don't understand. I don't
you
know
keep using these key words like wipe out. It's not me, it's you.
Okay, smut mama.
And really, are you serious right now? It's a stream of water.
I know, but it's like,
how do you need a tutorial on this? What are you trying to accomplish?
Really, what am I trying to accomplish?
Yes, I don't know anymore.
Sometimes it's perfect, and other times maybe I need to leave it on longer. Maybe I need to turn the pressure up to knocking me off the seat. I don't know.
I'm currently placing an ad for a new partner because if my partner doesn't know how to use a bidet,
I know how to use it.
We are in trouble.
I know how to use it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, you know the bidet isn't moving on you, right? That would be a you thing.
That's what I'm saying. I need to find proper positioning on the bidet.
Well, YouTube isn't going to get into that, okay? That's a learn through your own experiences type of thing.
Well, that's what I need to do, I guess.
Yeah, because, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I have one too. And if I put it on too strong and there's a little bit of an opening for the water to get through, I'm going to use good words, not like you. Then what usually happens is I'm not spraying a wall. I'm spraying my dog's face because my dog is usually right there on my knees.
Okay, now that's a whole other show.
She is. My new puppy is just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? She's on my knees. I'm like, oh, maybe once in a while I sprayed her on purpose. I'm just saying. It could have happened that way. I don't recall.
Right. Oh my gosh. And I totally want to invite my daughter over and have her stand in front of it and turn it on. I'm dying to do that.
Dear Lord. You need a little more bidet exposure in your life. You're far too entertained with this.
I am.
Jeez Louise.
Well, it even has a self-cleaning mode.
Yeah, I think mine does too. I don't think I've ever done it, but
I do mine at least twice a week.
That might be a little overboard, but you and your booty do you, okay?
I'm trying. It just doesn't work all the time.
Oh my goodness. Well, next time I come over, we'll have to have a little lesson.
Will you stand in front of it for me?
I'll show you proper cheek placement.
Now who's being nasty?
This is what you're asking to learn. How is that nasty? You just asked that.
Okay, enough bidet talk.
That's a pretty crappy subject. Anyway, go ahead.
What do we got going on this week?
All right, let's jump right into what suckered me into writing about this unbelievable case.
Okay.
Let the grim begin. So let's start with the video. Sarah Boone is sitting in her Winter Park, Florida home, recording from her phone what appears to be just an ordinary large blue suitcase. It's laying on its backside, looks to be full, and zipped up all the way around while resting on her disturbingly disgusting carpet. And yes, I'm being a little judgy about the carpet, but ill. I sure as heck wouldn't be recording if my carpet looked like that, would you?
Okay, so I saw the video, and go ahead and be judgy all you want. I would have been embarrassed. First of all, my carpet wouldn't look like that, but I would have been embarrassed. And what was that blue stuff all over that rug?
No idea. I just kept looking at it like there's too many things on that carpet to try to figure anything out. It's just gross.
You're right. It was disturbing.
Maybe it was blue toilet water from her bidet.
You are so bad. Oh, my God. Is this going to be brought up now through the whole story?
Who knows? We'll see where I could sprinkle it in.
You know what? You need to have your own self-cleaning mode.
So Sarah keeps her camera fixed on the suitcase, and then you hear a grown man's voice say, Sarah, excuse me? Did that just come from the suitcase? Sarah responds to the suitcase in a very slurred voice and says, for everything you've done to me. That's my best Sarah drunk voice. And the Emmy goes to...
Not you.
Is it an Emmy or is it an Oscar? Hold on.
Either one.
The voice continues to say her name, and she says, you. Now, with a little more desperation in his voice, he continues to call out her name. She throws out a wicked laugh and tells him he's stupid. The voice continues calling for her, and she sarcastically says, that's my name. Don't wear it out. You know, it's bad enough she's being obnoxious and drunk, but this kindergarten bullying is way over the line.
Nothing like a drunk kindergartner.
In a more serious tone, he tells her, Sarah, I can't breathe, baby. But at this point, Sarah goes to a dark place and says, that's what you do when you choke me.
Are you going to be doing that through the whole thing?
I am. I'm enjoying it immensely.
Let me apologize to her audience right now. She has her own mind. I can't control her.
They're appreciating the drama.
We'll go with that.
The man continues to plead, telling her that he can't breathe. But every time he begs, she just giggles. She's blatantly letting him know how much she's enjoying the power that she has over him at this moment. He again tells her that he can't breathe, and she reverts back to her playground antics and says, that's on you. She continues to taunt him, but it's hard to decipher what she's actually saying because her words are becoming more slurred. She's obviously buzzed.
Well, if she sounds like that, she's more than buzzed. But I remember when I watched the video, it seemed like he was increasingly getting winded.
I don't know if I heard that, but you probably did. I was just sitting there so in awe of what was happening.
Yeah, same thing.
After a brief pause, he's calling her name a bit more rapidly now, and you can tell he's getting more desperate. When he pleads, she says, well, that's what it feels like when you cheat on me. Now, at this point, according to the video, over 2 minutes have gone by, and just before she stops recording, she yells at him again, you should probably shut the up then. But he keeps calling her name. In a super creepy moment, she pauses and just says, shh, and then turns the video off. Now, after watching that little bit of craziness, I'm all in like a fish on a hook. More fat, juicy worms, please.
Okay. But, watching it, I fully agree that shh was really sadistic.
It was so cruel. It really was. So, on February 24th, 2020, before the suitcase came into play, 42-year-old Sarah Boone and her 42-year-old boyfriend, George Torres Jr., were spending the evening together at Sarah's home. According to Sarah, the couple just wanted to spend a quiet evening together, painting, drinking a bottle of wine, and finishing up a puzzle that they had been working on. Geez, doesn't that sound like a senior citizen dream date?
Sponsored by Medicare.
Appropriately. Now, Sarah made a point many times over to say it had just been a bottle of wine, not multiple bottles, just one. But when you hear her speaking on the video, it's obvious that she's wasted. So now if I were Sarah and was desperate for a potential out for a lapse in judgment, I'd be claiming I drank an entire case of wine so I could have that as an excuse. But, silly Sarah is sticking with just one.
Or she could honestly say, it was really good and I just lost track. I mean, at least that would have been honest.
Something other than I know it was one, because one isn't going to get you this buzzed, and you shared it.
And how many bottles were in the kitchen or in the trash?
They don't even go there.
Ugh.
At some point during the night, she claims that she and George both decided to play hide and seek. This is rather odd, but it sounds like they were being spontaneously playful at that moment. So I'm not mad about that. It actually sounds kind of cute. But here's where everything goes awry and her story completely unravels. Sarah claims that in order to play hide and seek, a pretty straightforward game, with the instructions actually in the title, she had to help George get into the suitcase. Then she had to zip it up all the way in order for him to hide from her. Now, call me crazy, but why would the hider get help from the seeker? When Sarah explains this to the detective, she's acting like, this makes perfect sense. Duh. And maybe as a kid, she also ignored the title of dodgeball and participated by just standing perfectly still and getting mercilessly pummeled over and over by that big-ass red ball. That might actually explain her advanced hide-and-seek techniques. So, of course, Sarah's explanation makes no sense, and she's either straight up lying or really stupid. I'm going to lean toward the latter.
Really stupid is an understatement. And in essence, she's expecting the police to believe this insane story.
Absolutely 1,000%.
And let me just make another observation. They go from senior citizen evening to schoolyard. Is there no adult in between?
No, apparently not.
Wow.
But the bigger question here is how and why did George get into the suitcase? Just looking at the pictures shown of him, he doesn't look like a very big guy. And he couldn't have been, or he wouldn't have even fit inside the suitcase. And Sarah is a very petite woman. I'm guessing she would have been way too small to have actually forced a grown man into the suitcase. So did she trick him into climbing in, or did he get in there of his own free will? My guess is he must have climbed in there and positioned himself on his own, because he would have needed to really bend into a tight fetal position, to even fit right.
Mm-hmm.
But why would he do that? Who in their right mind would climb into a suitcase and allow somebody to zip it all the way closed? I completely 100% trust my husband. But if he asked me to hop into a suitcase and let him zip it all the way up, that would be a rock hard pass. Not happening, dude. This would never be a good idea unless you're super committed and ready to do whatever it takes to win the dang game. Because technically, that's what happened.
Okay, first, personally, unless it's a steamer trunk, my tuchus is not fitting in any type of suitcase. And
how much steam is required?
Doesn't steam undo wrinkles? So yeah, I would have been a hot mess.
You pop out of there all 20 years younger.
That's right. Ta-da! Okay, and second, I'm going to insert a PSA here. Before getting into any suitcase, grab a pen. I saw this on a video. You can stick it in the zipper and it releases it.
Well, I'm going to do another PSA to follow up your PSA. Just don't ever get into a suitcase. How about that?
Well, you don't know what people are into.
Ignore her. No pen required. Just don't get into the damn suitcase.
Just in case. Put a pen in your pocket.
It's quickly discovered that the relationship between Sarah and George is not all rainbows, lollipops, painting, and puzzles. They each have a history of domestic violence coming from both sides during their 3.5 years together. George had been arrested 4 times for domestic violence against Sarah, including a battery charge for strangling her in 2018. That explains her comment. When police arrived on scene for this particular incident, Sarah told investigators she was dragged upstairs by George and kicked in the right eye because she had talked to a guy at a bar. But then George told the cops that it was actually Sarah who began to strangle him, and if he had not kicked her off of him, she would have incapacitated him. Dang, these two are like crazed drunk weasels.
And how does he drag her upstairs and kick her in the eye at the same time? Is he dragging her by her feet? That doesn't even make sense.
I'm assuming he drags her and then kicks her in the eye. What are you thinking?
I just had visions. You said she got
Pulling a
kicked in
body while kicking the eye.
dragged upstairs by George and kicked in the right eye.
Okay, did you just have a bottle of wine?
It was really good. I lost track.
Yeah, apparently.
You talk so well and your explanations are so great. This is how my brain worked.
Apparently, they're not good at all because that's not where I was going.
Okay. Anyway.
Then in 2019, Sarah had accused George of punching her in the left ear, which led to a restraining order for a short time. But after each one of these incidents where George abused Sarah, Sarah went and bailed George out faithfully. Sarah had also been arrested one time for violence against him, but those charges were dismissed. At the time of this particular incident, George was on parole for domestic violence against Sarah. So how sad is this? And these are just the actual arrests for the two of them. I can only imagine how many times the violence between them didn't amount to police intervention.
And how is he released or the charges dismissed if he was on parole? Isn't that a jailable offense?
I'm guessing that maybe he was recently on parole, but you're right. Why wasn't he on parole for the other incidents?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense.
And why wasn't he just thrown in jail and is done with it, not being able to be bailed out?
Because she kept bailing him out.
No, what I'm saying is because of all the offenses, how is he allowed bail at this point?
I get you. I don't know. Good question. With that type of violent history between them, it makes it even less plausible that George would trust her enough to put himself into a dangerous situation, aka a suitcase, and allow her to fully zip it up. Even as a game, a dare, or a joke, with their harmful past and toxicity toward each other, there's no way he wouldn't hesitate. And while listening to her reactions in her very own video, you get a little glimpse of her comfortable cruelty toward him. He's no angel, and with their history, he may have even had a little something coming his way that night. Who knows? But her video only shows one side of the callousness, and she exhibits zero compassion for his very obvious suffering. After taunting him and ignoring his desperate cries for help, Sarah nonchalantly goes upstairs and falls asleep. She slept in and didn't wake up until 12:30 p.m. the following day. Let's not forget that George has been in the suitcase since the night prior.
Do you know when she locked him in the suitcase to begin with? I mean, about what time it was?
She's really all over the place when they're asking her about the timeline. She says she doesn't keep track of time, but she does say that they started playing, whatever that means, at about 4 p.m. the day before. And then she claims that he didn't get into the suitcase until right before she started videotaping him. But when she started videotaping him, he was already running out of air.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't make sense.
She doesn't keep track of time. Does the woman not have a job?
I have no idea, but that's what she said. I don't ever look at the clock.
Okay. And in her drunk voice, apparently.
Yeah. Sarah claims that when she woke up, she had completely forgotten about George being in the suitcase and didn't remember it until she moseyed on down the stairs and saw it. She opened the suitcase and found him purple and not breathing. So she pulled him out and immediately performed CPR, but it was too late. George was dead. Of course he was dead. Did she think he was going to pop out there and take her to lunch?
Let's go to brunch.
Right, I'm hungry.
Right. I wonder if him not being able to breathe was because there was no air circulation in the suitcase or because he was twisted up like a pretzel to fit inside.
Well, it's funny that you asked that because I don't remember the person's name, but someone, when I was researching, had said one of the reasons he would have had such difficulty breathing was not only because the air was becoming less and less in the small space, but because his body had to be in a position where his lungs couldn't expand enough to get enough air into his body.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's like a slow suffocation and you're not able to take a full breath.
Mm-hmm. That's probably why when I heard it, he sounded winded.
Yeah, that's probably why. Now, check this part out. Her first phone call was not to 911.
Of course not.
Instead, she decided to call her ex-husband. So to me, this is really suspicious. It looks like she panicked when she found the body and she was looking for help to figure out what to do. If you have nothing to fear, you immediately call 911. That's it, no other options. Because it's not about you, it's about the person who died. So I'm wondering if she called her ex over, and when he saw what was up, he told her to call 911. He wanted nothing to do with that. And I'm making assumptions here about that, but they did a quick interview with the ex-husband at the scene, and he seemed like a reasonable and decent guy. And then he also confirmed that he could never count on Sarah to pick up their 9-year-old son when she was supposed to. They shared custody of him because she tends to drink. And later, we also see that while being interviewed, Sarah's hands shake like a hardcore alcoholic. You know how they do that?
Mm-hmm. Going through withdrawals, no doubt.
Exactly. When Sarah finally calls 911, the very first thing out of her mouth is, "My boyfriend is dead." She's not sad, not crying, and she doesn't even sound traumatized. She's just stating a fact. Then she quickly goes into her story of how she and her boyfriend were playing the night before, and he got into the suitcase to play hide and seek. But then, and this is important, she thought it would be funny to zip him up in it. Then she tells the operator that she went upstairs and fell asleep, woke up, and her boyfriend was dead in the suitcase. And, quote, "I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened," end quote. What do you mean you don't know what happened? You just literally told the operator that you zipped a man, suitcase, couldn't breathe, inescapable death. That's exactly what happened.
Was she claiming complete ignorance to this?
The whole time she's claiming ignorance as to she did not understand that putting somebody in a suitcase and zipping it all the way up would amount to death. She did not understand that at all.
Wow. Apparently she didn't understand that 911 calls are recorded and can be used against you in a court of law.
This lady is seriously not smart. As we're going to see throughout this story, she's her own worst enemy. Sarah continues to tell the operator her wild story, but, in a really detached manner. Her behavior does not align with someone who is shocked and dismayed at finding a man dead in her house by her very own hands, and that this man was her boyfriend, somebody she was intimate and romantically involved with. She's not remorseful at all.
Do you know how long they were together? Before she killed him?
Yeah, they were together 3.5 years. It's a long time.
Well, and you were talking about trust. That does build some trust, but if part of their relationship is abuse.
Exactly. That trust is shot. When police arrive, Sarah tells them the very same story, but this time with a little bit more of a dramatic flair, for how she reacted upon finding George in the suitcase. She tells the police, "Oh, he's in the suitcase still. That's when I found him and took him out and tried doing CPR. And then I called you guys." Now, the whole time she's outside of her apartment, while the police are inside with George's dead body, Sarah's hyper-focused on getting her Dr. Pepper soda and cigarettes from the house. She irritatingly keeps asking the officer if she can just go in and get it because she's really thirsty. The officer keeps reminding her that she cannot, but Sarah's like an obnoxious little kid and keeps pressing. Finally, the officer agrees to get her some water, and then Sarah sits down and calms down for a minute. This whole scene is weird, but what's weirder is that she never says anything about George. She never says she's sorry about what happened or how much she'll miss him or anything like that. When she speaks, it's only to ask for Dr. Pepper, cigarettes, or to defend herself and reiterate that she has no idea what happened to George. When asked questions, she sounds more like a tour guide than a person who just caused someone's horrifying and painful demise.
She really doesn't know how to help herself at all, does she?
She does not, and this continues on. She's terrible. I mean, she's really dumb. The only time I saw any genuine concern on Sarah's face while she was outside of her home with George's body still in there was when she suddenly says, "I'm afraid for my life. His family has never liked me."
Gee, I wonder why.
Right? It's a mystery. When officers ask if she has notified anyone in George's family of his death, she screams, "No, they're down the road and they're going to kill me." You can tell the police are caught off guard, but she's obviously looking for sympathy and protection at this point. She goes on to say that his family calls her the blue-eyed white dragon. Well, sounds like they're very perceptive.
So there's still no concern for George at this point?
No, none at all.
Wow. And that name actually is kind of hysterical.
I love it. Too bad you don't have blue eyes.
Okay, I was going to say something about the color of my eyes, but I know exactly where you'd go with that. And I'm sure it had something to do with the bidet. So I'm going to let that one go.
The next morning, Sarah is called to the police station for an interrogation. She continues to play shocked and immediately starts telling the detectives the same ridiculous story, and that when she left him in the suitcase, quote, "I thought he was okay," end quote. When the detective says that he was obviously not okay, Sarah starts to speak with a new weird tone, as if she's being more assertive. And she says, "Guys, that's how we are with each other. Nobody understands our relationship. This whole suitcase thing never happened before." At this point, it's becoming very clear that Sarah is not the sharpest tool in the shed.
It also becomes clear that I don't think she realizes the words coming out of her mouth.
I think she thinks she's choosing her words carefully because she's being so specific with her words. But the words she's choosing are, like you said, just not helping her in the slightest.
No.
She obviously does not understand how defending herself works.
She apparently has not listened to our podcast.
Although that might be more confusing. And she still wouldn't know how to use a bidet.
What did I say? Here it goes.
During the interview, Sarah willingly gave her phone to the forensic detectives. When they searched it, they found not one, but 2 videos that she had taken that night. The second video was 11 minutes after the first video, and it focused on the suitcase again. But in this video, you can see that the suitcase has been moved to a different area and it's been flipped over. So let's stop here and digest this for a minute. She wouldn't unzip him to, let him breathe or anything, but she took the time and made the effort to pick up the suitcase with a grown man inside, move it, and then went the extra mile to flip it over. She's a tiny woman, mind you. This is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And in her initial interview outside of her apartment, she claimed that she never touched the suitcase and moved it. But during the interrogation, she freely admits to picking it up and flipping it over. Pick a story, Sarah. If you're going to lie, you got to be able to keep your story straight.
Well, that explains it, because when I watched the video, they must have put both parts together, because I saw it in the beginning. It was in the one position because I could see him moving. Then it cut out briefly, and then it was in the other position and moved. So just speculation here, but if he couldn't breathe in the first position, flipping it over definitely did him in.
I would completely agree.
Oy, this woman.
I think she did that on purpose.
Probably to torture him more.
When Sarah is confronted with the videos that they found on her phone, she does seem genuinely surprised and says she did not remember making the recordings. I do think she genuinely forgot that she had recorded her dirty deed for a moment, but when they said they had it, she definitely remembered, because when the officers play the video for her, she watches the first one, and when the second one is about to be played, She says she doesn't want to see it, and she asks if she has to watch it. They say no, but it might be in her best interest to actually explain what happened. So as they watch it together, you can hear the vindictiveness in her voice. Then Sarah says, "Guys, this is killing me right now. I can't watch this."
Oh, hell no.
Right? First of all, what a terrible choice of words to say that they are killing her by asking her to watch herself literally killing George. Secondly, I think she gives a little away when she really doesn't want to see the video that she claims she had no idea even existed. I think at that point she remembered.
Mm-hmm.
She knew what was on there and that it was going to make her look really bad when she was saying, "You," while he's begging to be let out. So she was trying to avoid that. But obviously they'd already seen it. Did she think if they didn't play it, it would just all go away? It's also ridiculous that she claimed to not remember anything about how this happened. And then all of a sudden she remembers every detail about how she didn't zip it up all the way so that he could get himself out, which was a lie. It was zipped up all the way. And that she never planned to leave him in the suitcase. But then why would you take the time to reposition such a heavy object before you casually stroll up to your bedroom and fall asleep? I mean, come on, crazy.
And I'm sure you're right. She probably did forget with her level of intoxication. But once confronted with the video, it all came back to her. I would have made her watch it and not asked if she wanted to watch it. It's like, look what you did.
Exactly. I would have put toothpicks in her eyes and kept her eyelids open.
More torture.
While she was sitting on a bidet.
I am going to hurt you bad.
Little lower body waterboarding.
Sometimes I regret my choices.
You brought it up. That's all I'm saying. Sarah now becomes a little frantic and again starts to ramble and try to convince the officers that it's not her fault and she just accidentally fell asleep. But again, she never cries or says anything compassionate about George's death. Her only focus is her. Then she suggests that she's still not sure how George died. Maybe he, quote, suffocated or had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what, end quote. When the officer asks if he had any medical conditions, she clearly says, "None that I know of." Sarah. Now, if you just try to plant another possible reason for his death and someone asks you if he has medical issues, wouldn't you totally allude to, yeah, maybe? I mean, who knows? That's possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You're right. Maybe he does. And literally, here's your sign. Do you remember that Jeff Foxworthy joke about stupid people?
Oh, I think everybody does. I think, what was it, like in the 90s?
Yeah.
People walked around and do stupid things and go, here's
your sign.
I think your husband did that to me a couple times now that I'm thinking about it.
I think he still does it.
Behind my back and front of my face.
Mm-hmm.
George's body was autopsied and found to have injuries to his left shoulder, neck, a cut on his lip, a swollen mouth, scratches, and bruises. Sarah tried to claim that she had not touched him, but George had recently fallen off her son's bike, and he was also notorious for running himself into walls. Really, Sarah? But it was confirmed that George had no injuries prior to that fateful evening. Sounds like she may have done something to him while he was captured inside the bag. It was a fabric suitcase, so it's plausible for her to have hit the bag and caused some injuries.
Or she did that before he got in. That's probably how she got him in.
Beat him into it?
Right.
Maybe.
This woman really does not have a conscience.
She does not. She continues to try to make her same crazy story convincing, but now she's jumping around and talking about how much she did for George to help him with all of his problems, because she really loved him. She pretty much tells them what an awesome girlfriend she is, and she downright denies doing absolutely anything wrong. Okay, so now how are you going to be told he died from being left in a suitcase, which is exactly what you did on purpose, and even recorded yourself, dum-dum, taunting and laughing at him while you were doing it, and you still think you had nothing to do with his death? It's like the perfect definition of insanity when you keep doing, or in her case, repeating the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Without a doubt, I believe she wanted to be cruel to him by the way she was acting, but maybe being intoxicated skewed her reality, and she couldn't comprehend that what she was doing would actually kill him. I can buy off on that. But she's such a narcissist that she won't even take that amount of responsibility. She refuses to be held accountable in any way. And quite frankly, I'm so tired of people being let off the hook because they're intoxicated. If you choose to become intoxicated, then everything you do in that mindset, and I'll use her very own playground antics, that's on you.
Wow.
Don't get me started.
Exactly. And I wonder if they both had been drinking or if she started after he was in the suitcase. I still can't understand why he would voluntarily get into the suitcase. I just don't understand why he would do it.
I don't understand why he would do it either, so I'm guessing with both of them being drinkers, he had to be a little wasted to get in there.
I would agree.
During the interrogation, when asked about her drinking habits, Sarah got very defensive. She comes off a little holier than thou by saying she never drinks too much. In fact, she's not even physically able to drink too much. She just doesn't like the feeling of being out of control. So, how dare you, sir? I can totally relate to not liking feeling out of control, which is exactly why I rarely indulge. But I can't say the same for Sloshy Sarah.
And that's the stupidest thing that she could have said. So you weren't that drunk, so you were in control of your actions then.
Exactly. She just keeps doing it again and again and again, where she just confirms that she knew what she was doing.
Hey, drunk or not, she knew what she was doing.
Drunk or sober, she's just dumb. She claims that on that day, she was absolutely not drunk. And that evening was one of the better days that she and George had had in a very long time. But later in the interview, when she can't answer why she just didn't let him out of the suitcase, she says, "I'm blaming it on the wine."
Poor wine getting a bad rap.
But it was just a bottle.
One little tiny one, even just
And
a half of one.
Yeah, exactly. It was only half. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Sloshy Sarah, but you can't have it both ways. You're definitely not drunk. In fact, you're not even capable of getting drunk. But, the wine is to blame. So turns out, surprise, surprise, Sarah did have a drinking problem. You got to have some big drunk bolas to continue to deny what's so freaking obvious to the rest of the world. And if killer hide and seek is a better day for you guys, I'd really hate to see a not so great day.
I just can't with her anymore.
Me neither. During her interrogation, she doesn't seem distraught except for how she thinks this little inconvenience may affect her future. Sarah continues to be very casual toward the detectives, and she even keeps cutting them off during questioning. I'm assuming to try to control the direction of the conversation. When one of the detectives asked her why she left the room when George was in distress, she said, "I thought it was the boy calling Wolf again." The boy calling Wolf? Okay. So she decided he was going to fake suffocate and she just wasn't going to fall for it? When asked point blank why she didn't just let him out when he was begging, she said, "To be honest with you, I don't know." This is probably the only moment during the interrogation where she seems genuine.
Okay, I have a problem with crying wolf again. So this has happened before?
Maybe not in a suitcase, but he's obviously been in distress before because he's cried wolf a few times apparently. At the end of the interrogation, Sarah says that, quote, "In itself, for me to have to live with getting him out and doing what I did is punishment enough. Nonetheless, I have to live without him now." End quote. Then the detective says, "His daughters do too." And she looks right at him and snarkily says, Are you trying to make it worse?
No. My God.
So this part made me laugh out loud. Because how in the hell are you going to even attempt to be a Karen in this moment? A killer Karen at that.
Exactly. And punishment enough?
Sarah was arrested that day and subsequently charged with second-degree murder and held without bail for killing George. I'm glad they are pursuing her for second-degree murder because, in my opinion, she was exceptionally cruel. But even if she's able to beat that charge, she is definitely liable for manslaughter. No questions asked.
So I know what manslaughter is, but first and second degree murder, what are the differences?
Well, first is premeditated.
Okay, so second then would be, like you said, with cruel intent, not realizing they're going to die.
I think it might be an in-the-moment decision to murder, not premeditation, but it's definitely your decision to murder. That's what I think it is.
I would think it's something like that, along that line too.
Since she's been in jail, she has been behaving even more irrationally. Who'd have thunk that could even be possible, right? She has had issues with each of her court-appointed attorneys and has gone through 8 of them now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I didn't even know they gave them that many. Each attorney appointed to represent her has respectfully withdrawn due to irreconcilable differences with Sarah.
They're getting divorced.
Happily divorced.
Right.
Sarah's complaints have included a lack of trust because, they lie, are prejudiced against her, and have nasty attitudes. When pressed by the judge to tell him exactly how the attorneys lied to her, she just rambled and never gave an answer.
They probably told her the truth, and Killer Karen came out. She wasn't having it and probably wanted to call the manager. Well, in this case, the judge.
Exactly. While looking for her next attorney, she even put out a self-drawn help wanted ad titled Inmate Seeks Attorney.
Oh, Sarah.
I will say I'm highly entertained by this side of Sarah because I'm going to tell you what else it says. It goes on to say, looking for a prosperous challenge? Ready for your close-up on national television? Are you zealous with a side of keen? Show the world who you are with your original creativity, extraordinary expertise, confident ingenuity. Then she goes into a slew of qualifications she's looking for, which sounds more like a Tinder profile rather than attorney skills. And beneath that, it says, epic opportunity awaits. Then she puts her location and prison number at the bottom. She writes in big letters, invest in the oppressed. Believe.
And who's going to pay for this? I mean, seriously, that whole thing is just ridiculous.
This is the only thing I love that Sarah did.
Is it swipe left or right for hell no? I can never remember.
It's to throw your phone in the toilet. You don't even accidentally want to do the wrong thing here.
Delete the app.
Throw your phone in the toilet and put the bidet on.
Again, my life choices.
You put your ass out on the line. I'm just saying.
Well, at least it's going to be clean.
But even more unbelievably, an attorney was interviewed and claimed that if he was in Florida, he would definitely represent her. Takes all kinds. His argument, now listen to this, it's actually interesting, was that George got himself into the suitcase, which I believe. I don't see how she could have done it. And she was not obligated to get him out because there was no Good Samaritan law. And taunting him is not a crime. So unless there was evidence of force or fear that put him in that suitcase against his will, there is no crime.
What?
So you stay open-minded. I'm trying to stay open-minded, okay? And I actually do understand this horrible defense. But even in Sarah's version of the story, she freely admits that she was the one who thought it would be, remember this part, funny to zip up the suitcase all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really key because it was not possible for George to do that himself. And her actions created a barrier for George not to be able to escape what he thought was only a game. It's clear through his cries for help that he was not trying to commit suicide that day, and he fully relied on her and expected her to let him out.
I mean, I get the defense. Okay, I'm being open-minded. I get the defense, but she is still culpable no matter what. And I'm sure George had some reasonable expectations of being let out. I mean, doesn't that mean anything?
I completely agree. I'm going to use his second example as well. This same attorney uses the example that if you see someone get into a pool and they can't swim, you can actually watch them drown, videotape it, and taunt them while they die, and you are not responsible in any way for their death. But in my opinion, taking this second example, that does not apply if you're the person who playfully put the non-swimmer into the pool and then took advantage of their disadvantage of not being able to swim. That's clearly murder.
Yeah, that one doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, the way he's saying it doesn't make sense. There's too many other circumstances that could come into play to totally turn it around.
Well, he's basically saying, somebody's walking by and sees somebody else getting in the pool.
Where they had nothing to do with it. Their
Right.
hands are totally clean.
Right.
And this is not the case with Sarah.
No.
Her hands are not clean. It's a little confusing as to whether Sarah is still entitled to a court-appointed attorney, because I heard that her last attorney, although she tried, was not released from her case. But I also read that Sarah was deemed to have forfeited her right to court-appointed counsel and must now either obtain her own attorney at her own expense or represent herself in court. But giving her a platform in court to represent herself is expected to be an absolute train wreck. And I wonder why this is why they've given her so many court-appointed attorneys, because I thought that maxed out at some point.
And I bet you that attorney that she's still stuck with, or the attorney that stuck with her, wishes she was like number 2 or 3.
Exactly.
And I would love it if she represented herself. I would totally go to Florida to watch the circus.
I will stay home comfortably and watch it on TV. She is very manipulative. She's moody, bizarre, and has already proven herself to be extremely difficult when it comes to court proceedings. She's unpredictable and sometimes doesn't even come to court when she's supposed to because she gets upset when things don't go her way. She's already won a motion to have her hand and ankle shackles removed while she's in court, though. The judge granted her that motion, but warned her that a stun cuff will still be used on her while she's in court. She's expected to use the battered woman defense at her trial. Her latest trial date has been set for October 7th, 2024. We will, of course, do an update for you all once we know what happens.
Darn, I can't go. That's my daughter's birthday.
What's more important?
Well, probably if you ask either one of them, they'd say they are.
Just leave her at home with the bidet. That's more than enough.
I'm sorry to our listeners. She's lost her mind once again.
I had to get one more in.
Apparently.
All right. So to summarize this Suitcase case is so outrageous and like nothing I've ever heard before. I think anybody who follows true crime would not be surprised when we hear about a body being found in a suitcase. Unfortunately, that happens far too often. It seems to be a very convenient way for someone to inconspicuously dispose of a body. But to put the body in there alive, supposedly with permission, is a very unique situation. I'm sure that when George found himself in the suitcase, whether it was with his permission or not, because we still don't know for sure, once he started calling for help, he fully expected to be let out by the person who he trusted and loved and who claimed to love him back. But how can a person claim to love you while they comfortably sleep in a warm bed while you are stuffed into a suitcase, unable to move, unable to breathe, and unable to free yourself? It takes a real monster to trick someone into a false sense of security and then with no conscience or remorse, just zip it all away.
Wow. That whole thing is crazy.
It's wild.
And she's just, I want to say she's lost her mind, but I don't think she has one.
She's probably as clear-headed as she can be.
Well, I'm really curious to see what happens.
Me too.
And I do hope they televise it. I want to see this woman.
I'm definitely going to follow up on this, and we will definitely bring it back.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing this to us. Very interesting.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
We'd like to thank everyone for listening. And remember to take care and don't forget to let your grimaginations run wild. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
We would just like to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send us your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @grimwitwithdimwits, X @grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook grimwitwithdimwits. And please join us every Monday for new episodes and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
And we would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and they would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.